So, hello, lovely students, and welcome to the first episode I've done of a new series for this course on books on writing for writers. I'm going to summarise the book and add in any ideas that occur to me on how to make what's in it practically useful to you. And the first book I've chosen to look at is How to Write Like a Best-Selling Author by a gentleman called Tony Rossiter, published by Summersdale Publishers. So the strapline of the book is Secrets of Success from 50 of the world's greatest writers. And these range from Stephen King to J.K. Rowling to Georges Simenon, who wrote Maigret, many wonderful books about a French detective called Maigret. And the author is British, and the choice skews British, I reckon. Anyway, if this book were a piece of furniture, I reckon it would be a cupboard full of snacks, each one 6 pages long, featuring some insights into each writer's life and achievements, distinctive characteristics, and then their writing routines, and what we might learn from these. Now, while I wouldn't suggest you eat snacks on the loo, though I do know some readers who do, this is the sort of book you can dip into, get a shot of inspirational energy without getting bogged down eating several courses. Sorry, these metaphors are horribly mixed now. So, in this episode, I'm going to look at chapters on Jane Austen, the Brontes, and Agatha Christie. So if you don't like historical English female writers, then turn me off now, please. So, Jane Austen, 1775 to 1817, wrote 6 famous novels, and according to this book, is widely regarded as the originator of romantic comedy. Her success came after her death. In 1870, her biography was published, creating much interest. There was another revival again in the 1990s with film and media versions of her books. Now, as I remember growing up, which was an awfully long time ago, I absolutely loved Jane Austen's novels. They were like crack again to me. So Jane Austen's books are set in English country villages, and they've got courtship, marriage and money being top of the character's agenda. And it is these characters that make her writing so addictively entertaining, I think. Social aspiration, pride and silliness prevail, and characters who present differently to their true nature keep us riveted. Her tone is often ironic, as in this most quoted opening to Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Of course, much closer to the truth would be, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single woman without a good fortune must be in want of a husband. And that's what a lot of these books are about. So her writing's witty, snarky, and Tony Rossiter says she often uses a style called free indirect, which combines third-person storytelling with a character's inner voice. So you're hearing the story not in the first person, but as third persons. And this, to my mind, is a most distinctive and compelling trait of Jane Austen's writing, one that lends herself to her characters going on journeys of self-discovery as they realise their take on matters may need adjusting. So Emma, main character in the novel with the same name, for instance, is meeting Frank Churchill, who she believes to be in love with her. He stopped again, rose again, and seemed quite embarrassed. He was more in love with her than Emma had supposed, and who can say how it might have ended if his father had not made his appearance? So we experience third-person storytelling here in the description of the action, but we also experience what is going on in Emma's mind. Her fantasies, if you like, needless to say, Frank Churchill's affectations lie elsewhere. Now, if you'd like to play around with this technique, why don't you write a scene where 2 characters meet, maybe after a long time apart, and perhaps they were lovers? That is always a good dimension to bring. So they might be on a train, in a station, at a concert, in a shop, anywhere you like. It could be in a fantasy world of the future. So I'd like you to write a short scene, and I'd like you to give us the third person storytelling, but to go inside the character's heads. And if you like, take it in turns to go inside each character's head. So you could write one version of the scene which says what's going on, and then says what character A is thinking, and then one version of the scene with what character B is thinking. And you could mash those up and see how that works too. Now, the learning points from Jane Austen that Tony Rossiter includes are that long periods of time are helpful for character development and writing style. He mentions that the initial drafts of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice were created 15 years before publication, and that irony, when things are not what they seem on the surface, is critically important to rom-com. Now, let's bounce through now to another chapter in this book on the Brontes, or more specifically, Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte. Historically, following almost immediately after Jane Austen, the Brontes were an extraordinary family, 6 children born to a parson and his wife who lived at the parsonage in Haworth, Yorkshire, which is now a museum to them. So Charlotte is best known for writing Jane Eyre, and Emily is best known for writing Wuthering Heights, 2 outstanding novels featuring love, revenge, and vivid Gothic elements in their setting. Now, struck by the tragic early deaths of 2 sisters and their mother, Tony Rossiter describes how the remaining Bronte children became a little creative cell, an absolute powerhouse of creativity, actually, creating mythical kingdoms called Angria and Gondel, and writing sagas, articles and poems about them. I mean, I think this is amazing, because if you read a fantasy book that was written now with Angria in it or Gondel, it would sound completely appropriate, I think. So they're interested in art and visual composition too, and they honed their drawing skills by copying prints they came across. So both Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights contain powerful visual images and vivid, unforgettable settings, resulting in about 30 film versions being made of them, and Wuthering Heights inspiring that very famous Kate Bush song and video. So Tony Rossiter's learning points from Charlotte Bronte include the structure of a romantic novel is attraction, impediment, coming together, setting elements, landscape, weather, nature can be given symbolic significance, and personal feelings and experiences can help create vivid, believable characters. Indeed, like her central character in Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte had worked as a governess and visited a house where a former mistress of the house had gone mad, been kept on the top floor and killed in a fire, as Mr. Rochester keeps Bertha Mason in the novel. So Jane Eyre was revolutionary. It was written in the first person with a confessional tone and unprecedented psychological insights. It became immediately popular when it was published in 1847. Now, Wuthering Heights was Emily's only novel, and to some critics she is more poetic than Charlotte as a writer. The story of Heathcliff and Cathy is narrated mostly by 2 different people, Lockwood, Heathcliff's servant, and the servant Nellie Dean. And the theme is about the futility of revenge, and the novel is very popular in polls of the greatest love stories ever read. So the Yorkshire moors, full of mystery and mysticism, represent freedom, and the story ends with a shepherd boy seeing a ghostly image of Heathcliff and Catherine wandering on the moors. So alongside 2 terrific, amazing central characters in Jane Eyre and Heathcliff, which give us much to learn from, the Bronte sisters use setting for symbolism, foreshadowing and emphasis. Foreshadowing being, what's going to happen a bit later. When a tree is struck by lightning, for instance, Jane Eyre says, "The cloven halves were not broken from each other, for the firm base and strong roots kept them unsundered below. "You did right to hold fast to each other," I said, as if the monster splinters were living things and could hear me. Which is, of course, what happens to her and Mr. Rochester later on. They hold fast to each other. She's foreshadowed her personal destiny to that of a tree. In the last paragraph of Wuthering Heights, narrator Lockwood visits the graves of Heathcliff and Catherine. I lingered round them under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. A wonderful and vivid contrast of setting with possible fates of the main characters here. So Tony Rossiter chooses ambivalent images as a useful learning point. And to take this further, so you might find it useful to find description in either of these novels which amplifies a character's mood or events or contrasts with it. Copy any excerpts you especially like and then see how you can apply this technique to your own writing. Description of setting, in my experience, is much easier when it is a mirror or contrast with character and action and earns its place in your work, rather than just description for the sake of it, just for information. Finally, in this dip into authors and their approaches, I thought I'd consider this chapter on Agatha Christie, which is in here. So, born on the south coast of England in 1890, with a 50-year career, this grande dame of crime writing wrote 80 novels and short story collections and 9 plays. She sold over 1 billion copies of her books in English and that number again in translation. Tony Rossiter describes the structure of a typical Agatha mystery as having a murder committed early on, followed by examination of the crime scene, and then identifying and interrogating suspects. Red herrings appear, clues which go nowhere, and often a vital clue arises early on. Fake identities with characters not truly being who they appear to be proliferate. Very often the characters are confined to a closed community, an island, a hotel, a train or boarding school, earned the descriptor locked-room stories. In Miss Marple and Inspector Poirot, Agatha Christie created addictive and vivid characters for her fans. Miss Marple, an elderly spinster who is acutely observant while fading into the background herself, and Poirot, who is vain, fussy, and obsessed with symmetry, are both, as you might expect, extremely intelligent and analytical. Lesser characters usually have little development of depth, but are also often vividly drawn. Tony Rossiter quotes the description of Lady Westholme from Apartment with Death as entering a room with the assurance of a transatlantic liner coming into dock. Like her own lifestyle, Agatha Christie wrote about comfortable country house life and plundered her own history and knowledge from working as a nurse in a hospital dispensary during World War I. She created characters from people she saw in real life on public transport or in restaurants. Tony Rossiter gives the elements of a traditional murder mystery as a key learning point from her work. He also describes this element of closed community, and this is an aspect I think we can have fun with exploring. You could be writing about anything at all and put a scene or monologue or poem into a group setting, which may generate all sorts of possibilities. The writer's Room of Succession knew this when they put the family on a yacht, for instance, or in a tech billionaire's retreat at critical moments. You can even have a form of virtual locked room on Zoom or Teams these days to experiment. Who would be in the most relevant locked room for what you're writing at the moment? What might be the most helpful, worst thing that could happen there? So whatever projects you've got going, or just as an experiment or something you might think of doing, write a scene for it in a locked room. So I hope this lesson's given you some inspiration, practical ideas. As ever in this course, please send any thoughts, exercises, experiments you've done over, and I'd be delighted to respond. Thanks for your attention, and good luck with it.